neither be thou envious at the wicked. For there shall be no reward to the evil man. The candle of the wicked shall be put out. My son, fear thou the Lord and the king. Meddle not with them that are given to change.
For their calamity shall rise suddenly, and who knoweth the ruin of their foe? These things also belong to the wise. It is not good to have respect of persons in judgment. He that saith unto the wicked, Thou art righteous, him shall the people curse, nations shall abhor him. But to them that rebuke him shall be delight, and a good blessing shall come upon them. Every man shall kiss his lips that giveth the right answer. Prepare thy work without, and make it fit for thyself in the field, and afterward build thine house. Be not a witness against thy neighbor without cause, and deceive not with thy lips.
Where'd you end up at? Sorry, I was looking up something as I was reading along here. 29? All right. Say not, I will do so to him as he hath done to me. I will render to the man according to his work. I went by the field of the slothful, and by the vineyard of the man void of understanding. And lo, it was all grown over with thorns, and nettles had covered the face thereof, and the stone wall thereof was broken down. Then I saw and considered it well. I looked upon it and received instruction. Yet a little sleep, a little slumber, a little folding of the hands to sleep, so shall thy poverty come as one that traveleth, and thy want as an armed man. All right, let's take about 60 seconds. We'll let you gather your thoughts, and then we'll ask questions. All right, who's got a question? Brother Randall, start us off.
On verse, okay, on verse 21, my son, fear thou the Lord and the king, and meddle not with them that are given to change. What type of change are they talking about? Because I know some change is good, you know, but given to change, I would say it's something that you normally think of, but what kind of change, what are they talking about by given to change?
Sure. This is like other verses we read in Proverbs, like answer not a fool according to his folly, but you're also supposed to answer a fool according to his folly. So there's another verse here in Proverbs that actually talks to that. And it says, he that changeth not the Lord is whet as sword. Meaning, if you're not changing, God's pretty upset at you. To whet means to sharpen. So here's a verse that, isn't change good? And basically, this is, don't be involved with those that are always looking for the newest thing. Change isn't always good. The newest isn't always the best. There's a tendency in our society to look past the hoary head, to look past things that have been established because, that's their generation. Well, there might be some good in that too. So that's what it's talking about.
So that's what I was thinking. I just wanted to make sure.
Yeah. Who else? Good question. Emily. First part of verse 6. For by wise counsel thou shalt make thy war. Okay, and in a multitude of counselors there is safety. There are some proverbs that I write things next to, like here's a wisdom principle. And this is one of those verses that I have wisdom principle, and underneath it I have the life application that I think, and basically what I wrote here is commit to action after careful deliberation. So he's saying, for by wise counsel thou shalt make thy war, meaning I'm not going to have the ability to even fight or enter combat unless I first prepared and done the diligent counsel necessary to consider all the options. So really, I think it's speaking to us. We're not going to go out and start a fight with anybody, but so how do I apply that? And basically commit to action only after careful deliberation. You know, things like buying a house, think about it first. Things like getting married, seriously think about it first. I'm not saying that I've not enjoyed mine, but it's like, oh, what's the pastor saying? Wish I'd have thought about that one a little bit longer. No, that is not the case. But you see, I was on the phone with somebody just today. So-and-so met so-and-so, and then they ran off to the justice of peace, and it's only been 2 weeks. I want to, what? Okay. But that's not unheard of. I know of other people who, you know, they enter into activities that, had they thought about it a little bit longer and considered it and done due diligence, they probably would have never made that decision. My wife and I have a few of those in our life that we had wished we had gotten a little bit more wisdom on, or sat around deliberating just a little bit longer. So there's nothing wrong with being patient. But I like it. It's a great admonition. And in the second part of that, and in a multitude of counselors, there is safety. It's getting counsel from a number of folks, not to compare who you like, but you know, to find wise people that you associate with, and say, you know, here's my issue. What do you think? And take their nugget of wisdom. Don't say, however, I just talked to brother so-and-so, and he said this. What do you think? Because if anybody says that to me, I'm not going to answer your question. Just that's ethics. But anyway.
So just with you saying that right there,
Okay.
actually, you're saying the multitude of counselors, there is safety. With the way you're saying that, hey, don't, so it's you find your one person for this issue, you find your one person for that issue. Now you say, okay, I have one issue, so I'm going to ask you, and you, all the same question. Mm-hmm. Because you want the one, it's multiple, hey, who should I talk to about this?
Right.
Are you the right person, or should I find somebody else? Maybe.
The greatest example, the greatest example for this passage right here, I think, is President George H.W. Bush. Many people decried his political savvy, and he wasn't very politically savvy. He's not a politician. However, he was very wise. His cabinet that he chose was probably one of the finest cabinets that have ever existed in the White House. That's because he knew how to pick people who were smarter than him, who would not be afraid to tell him no and say what the truth really is. And not just to say it for political sake, but say it because it was the truth. Great ethics, great integrity on his original cabinet. It was a great example of this. He brought in a multitude of counselors that he could learn from, and he found great safety in them. So, who else? Questions?
At the beginning of that verse, it's talking about the wise counsel thou shalt make thy war.
Mm-hmm.
Another application could be that, you know, in life we have times where, you know, we should stand up and fight for certain things. And, you know, we get counsel as to whether, hey, this is something we should stand up for, or this is something that, you know,
Mm-hmm.
probably a battle that we should go into war over.
Mm-hmm.
Applicable as well.
Yeah. I think it's Asa. And, you know, there are one or two kings in Israel, that were recommended not to go to war. And they did, and they lost. And had they not gone to war, God would have blessed them and helped them, and they didn't listen to wise counsel. So, yeah, there's great admonition. Sometimes it's a recommendation to fight. Sometimes it's a recommendation not to. Jeremiah recommended that the remnant not leave Jerusalem and go to Egypt, but they did because they thought it was wise, and they ended up getting destroyed and brought into slavery again, and so things didn't go well for them. So, who else? Sir.
Verse number 20.
Okay.
How is it that there is no reward to the evil man?
Okay. I'm going to take this one in context. Let's start in verse 15. It says, "Lay not, O wicked man, against the dwelling of the righteous. Spoil not his resting place. For a just man falleth 7 times, and riseth up again. But the wicked shall fall into mischief. Rejoice not when thine enemy falleth." See a similar theme here. We're talking about the stumbling and the falling. So we've talking about a just man, and he rises up, and rejoice not when thine enemy falleth, and let not thine heart be glad when he stumbleth, lest the Lord see it and it displease him, and he turn away his wrath from him. And then he goes on to say, listen, while you're looking around at everybody, he says, fret not thyself because of evil men. I want to take you back to verse 1. It says, be not thou envious against evil men, neither desire to be with them. Verse 19, neither be thou envious at the wicked, for there shall be no reward to the evil man. So what happens, and if you look at some of the later Psalms, particularly those written by Asaph, he is big on this issue of, I considered the wicked, I looked at the evil, and they prospered in the land, and they did well, and look at all the good things they have, and they've got money and they've got ease. And then finally he gets to this point, he says, oh wait, he says, then I went into the house of the Lord and I considered their place and realized that they stood in a very slippery spot. And that's because the evil man might have reward in this life, the wicked might have reward in this life, but there is no reward for the wicked or the evil. Does that make sense? He's talking about eternity. Right. He said they're not going to prosper. You might see them, but in the end, consider them.
So it also puts in the perspective, like, the length or the time our lives are in comparison to eternity.
I think there's some of that.
I guess, like, right now to us, time is everything.
Right.
And then when we get to eternity, we're going to look back at our lives and just say, like, how that was really nothing. There wasn't much time at all.
Mm-hmm. So, I don't like necessarily providing that as a comparison. I understand that, and I don't necessarily have any disagreement. However, many of us can look at life and say, wow, look at this just great young person, and their life was ended so quickly. God, why would you do that? And God has his reasons why. And then we look at somebody who's a wretch, and they're 85 years old and still living in debauchery. And it's like, dude, what's your issue? And so, we look at them and go, well, that's not fair, God. Why does this person get to live so long? And this person who was righteous and walked with you and loved you and served you, and they're taken at a young age. We can't comprehend that. How's that fair? So I don't know that it necessarily applies to time, although there is a certain element that, those that honor the Lord are blessed of him. And sometimes, he just decides to take his own home because he wants to enjoy them. So, Will.
So, one verse is, for a just man falls 7 times.
Mm-hmm.
What's the significance of
7, numerologically speaking. Numerology thinking. Yeah, what you said. Numerologically. 7 is the number for complete. You'll remember in the New Testament, Jesus is talking about forgiveness, and then Peter goes, well, how many times must I forgive somebody? 7 times? And Jesus says, no, 7 times 70. That doesn't mean 490 times, but he's talking about a magnitude. Here, it's the issue is a just man can fall completely. He falls and he falls and he falls. He falls 7 times and riseth up again. The issue is that a just man who stumbles is going to get back up. And there's the real key. It's a just man. And, without that descriptor in front of the word, you don't get that rise up again. The fall will take him and he'll stay down. So the issue of the 7 really is talking to a complete and utter failure. He can still get back up.
It's a good verse for eternal security as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I would. Just man, how do I appear just before the Lord? I can. It's too much sin on my account. But when Christ is applied to my account, then I can stand before God justified. How was Lot justified?
He was not prepared to just Lot.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
No evidence of Christianity being taught on his life. I understand
Right.
it was holy.
Mm-hmm. I think, and you're right, in what we know of Lot in Scripture, outside of that, it says, for that just man, in the New Testament, vexed his own soul. He complicated himself. But I think the Lord was very careful to let us know that even though everything we have seen written about Lot is very, for lack of a better term, it's a heinous account. It's not pretty at all. That there was good in him, and the issue was he made a bad decision. And that decision was to choose before Abraham did. I think if Abraham had chosen first, life would have been a whole lot different for Lot. Abraham might have chosen first and said, you know what, I'll take over here. Why don't you take the well-watered plains? I could have seen Abraham doing that. And Lot could have gone down there, and God could have kept Lot from all that. But because Lot asserted himself over his elder and chose wrong, he then vexed his family. He vexed his own soul. He did things that he knew he wasn't supposed to be doing. And I think all the while inside, God saw the struggle of Lot and knew this was a man who really did love him, but felt like he was trapped in an endless circle of down spiraling decisions. So, and even desired to protect them. He didn't have to. And endured the mockery of everyone around him in doing so. He stood up for the Lord. But at the same time, he just, he just kept making downward spiral after downward spiral. And I think the riseth up again part is the fact that the New Testament, the Lord actually calls out that just man. And, what a redeeming statement. Here's a guy that everybody preaches about, and God says, no, he was a just man. He just made some bad decisions that hurt him. So, good observation. Who else? Question? Who's got a great thought? You read something and it's like, wow, that's great stuff. Good thought. Tim.
Just the context, towards the end of the chapter, I don't know exactly where it starts, but just basically how it talks about the slothful and laziness.
It starts in verse 30.
Yes, 30, I'm following. I have written down that laziness, I probably got it from somebody who was good, but.
No, that's wisdom.
Somebody else, but laziness is a slow, comfortable path to self-destruction.
Oh, that is good. No, that couldn't have been you.
But anyway, I just, and I just say that because, that's even a battle that I have to face as well from within.
Mhm.
It's so true, and it leads to just so many other, bad roads, bad decisions.
Mhm.
Laziness can definitely be a root problem
Oh, sure.
with a lot of other issues.
Laziness in the wrong season is what got David in trouble. Had he just gone to war like he knew he was supposed to, instead of, I'm the king now, I don't have to go out and do all that kind of stuff. I'm gonna stay here. No, David, you were supposed to be at battle. Things were supposed to be different. So, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, with that, I remember a preacher one time I can't remember who it was talking about, they asked their dad, what's the number one thing that you battle? And he said, laziness. He looks at his dad, what do you mean laziness? You're the most hardworking man I've ever met. He said, exactly, I battle it every day.
Mhm.
But that's the point, is it's a battle.
Boy, and technology just does not help us in that area. Technology promotes laziness. Yeah. Much as I am a fan and use technology all day long, I'm not a fan. Who else? Dave?
Verse 19, admonishing us to be not envious at the wicked.
Yeah. Yeah. And this is where we get to 1 Corinthians, and we compare ourselves among ourselves, and that is not wise. And why look at the wicked and go, man, look at all the things that they have. And we forget to look at our own life and realize, look at all that God has given me. I got salvation, I've got health, I've got a good family, I've got, at that point, what else do I need? So,
Kind of going back to verse number 6, and there's multiple other verses in Proverbs that talks about, that there's safety, with counselors and everything like that.
mhm.
But anyway, I think it's funny because as you become a man, as a young man, it's like, oh, I can't wait to become a man so I can make my own decisions and do whatever I want to do. And the Bible's mark of manhood is that I'm secure enough in who I am and know my limits that I won't make a big decision without wisdom being given to me or without wisdom being shown unto me. Because we know our own frailty, our own perception being limited by
Mhm.
either desire or whatever,
Right.
and the fact is that I think that it's wise for a person or a man or anybody for that matter to not make any major decisions without getting perspectives and different perspectives of people that you respect, spiritual counselors,
Mhm.
that are more spiritual than you are, and follow them and not take that as a slight against manhood, but rather be thankful that God's placed such people in your life.
Mhm. Absolutely. Yeah, there's nothing. I'll be honest. I've asked my dad for more wisdom in the last few years than I have in probably my previous life since I left home, because the further I go, the more I realize, oh man, Dad already solved this problem. Hey, Dad, what do you do about this? And the wisdom that you get is so much better. Opportunities to bounce ideas off folks, make sure you're not making the wrong decision. Yeah, because we're not all knowing. That's why I like the principle of team. Many brains, always a different point of view. Sometimes mine's not right. I can't believe I just said that. Anyway. Who else? Great thoughts. All right, let's take some prayer requests. Who's got a prayer request?